So thank you, everyone who is joining us online, on Zoom, on Facebook, on LinkedIn. Here we are for South Florida Tech Community Coffee. Thank you to all of our team for putting this together, and of course our panel, who I'll be introducing for a moment. If you've never been on a community coffee before, this is a weekly event where on Tuesday mornings at 8 o'clock we have a gathering, of course, with coffee, as you're going to be seeing from all of our guests here, for updates, best practices, and a way to connect with other local business leaders and technology leaders on what they're doing currently in South Florida. This is, of course, hosted by South Florida Tech, a nonprofit dedicated to building South Florida into a tech hub. I'm your host today, Joe Russo, CEO, filling in for Nikki Cabas, who's also online today, but I'm going to be taking the lead. And today's community coffee is all about events, the keys to hosting great virtual events. And we have three awesome leaders from our South Florida tech community here joining us, who are going to be talking a little bit about how they host some really great virtual events, all in their own way. And they're going to be alluding to that. But let me focus first of all on our panel. I'll introduce them. I would love to have them expand on those introductions, of course, as well. But we have Alon Shimel, who is the founder and CEO of MediaOps. We have Aileen Alon. I got that right, correct?
Close.
Close. Okay, I'm so sorry. And she's the program and partnerships manager at Venture Café Miami. And then Stephen Edwards, who's the managing director of Premier Virtual. All our great members and partners for us. So thank you so much to everybody for joining. I would love for each person in that order just to give a quick elevator speech on who they are and what they do. And we're going to dive into the questions. And if anyone has questions to add to it, feel free to put it in chat wherever you're watching, and we'll take those as well. So Alon, if you want to kick us off here and
Sure.
take a few seconds and tell us about who you are and what you do.
Sure. So my name's Alon. My company's MediaOps, and we are the people behind some kind of geeky community sites. So, DevOps.com, Security Boulevard, Container Journal. We also run a video platform, Digital Anarchist. We do TechStrong TV. And some various other, we also are co-founders of the DevOps Institute and the Accelerated Strategies Group. Basically, we play within the areas of digital transformation, cloud native, DevOps, and cybersecurity. And we reach about 1.5 million people a month these days through all of these various brands but very concentrated within those four areas, if you will. So when we, in our discussion today, my experience with virtual events is really in those four areas, dealing with a very distinct type of audience. But we're based in Boca Raton, though, our audience is only about 37% in the US, and the rest of it's worldwide. So we deal around the world. And, COVID has certainly changed our game a little bit, in that we used to broadcast live from conferences all around the world. And when those conferences went away, we started broadcasting from our studio in our office. And in a case of it's better to be lucky than smart, we started doing virtual events about 2 years ago before this. And the world came to our door when COVID, put an end to conferences. So happy to be here and help any way I can today.
You're on mute.
There you go.
Right as you start talking. Hi, everyone, and thank you, Joe and Nikki, for having me. I'm Aileen, and I have been with Venture Café Miami for a little over 1.5 years now. Venture Café, we're a nonprofit organization, and we consider ourselves an ecosystem convener and facilitator. We say that we're an ecosystem builder, but then people think that we have all of the money to actually build your startup or your company. But we don't. We can help connect you to people who, have the access and to the resources and the opportunities that you might need. But we have been in Miami for 4 years now. And really what we are known for is our Thursday gathering. It's the largest weekly gathering of innovators in Miami and greater South Florida that was happening pre-COVID every Thursday, and for around 300 people every week. So we are known for our in-person events, and obviously we have gone virtual along with everyone else, and still, working through a lens of diversity, equity, access, and inclusion to make sure that innovators all across Miami and greater South Florida have these access to, again, the people, the resources, the opportunities that they might need to grow their business. And we're also really good at making cross-sectoral and cross-industry connections, so that we can find more collaboration in our communities. And before Venture Cafe, I was working in the art sector for 7 years, and doing arts and community-related events. So it's been fun to expand upon kind of the cultural event lens into more of the tech and innovation realm. And happy to be here. Hopefully I can impart some knowledge to everyone.
Hello, my name is Steve Edwards. I'm the CEO founder of Premier Virtual. I come from the military. After I got out of the Army, I got into the event space and put on career fairs and hiring events for almost 9 years. 2 years ago, I saw a big change in the market and went virtual. There's platforms out there, couldn't find what I was looking for, so I built Premier Virtual. Our platform is mainly designed for career fairs. We do events for workforce developments, colleges, individual companies from Florida to California. Again, like Alon said, COVID hasn't been bad for our business on the virtual side of it. We also do resource events and anything like that as well. So any questions that you guys on, how to market your events, how to handle your events, let us know. I can definitely help you with that.
Awesome. And thank you all so much for joining us again. Alan's hitting on a lot of technical community, or Aileen's hitting on a lot of entrepreneurial community, and Steve's of course hitting on the entire talent piece that binds a lot of these technology companies together here in this time. And we're going to get a little bit of a unique flavor from each during the conversation here. So we'll start out with the most basic question that is kind of in front of us, and how have virtual events changed in 2020? And would love for anybody here to chime in as you feel fit, and we can just run this very conversationally back and forth as anyone has some comments to chime in with.
So I think, go ahead, Alon.
No, Steve, you do, man.
I was just gonna say, virtual events went from in my space on the career side, very small industry. There was only a couple real players in the industry, and it wasn't being done. You talk to organizations about virtual career fairs, and they're like, "What? How does that work? I don't really understand it." And now organizations are really seeing how efficient a virtual event can be. And that's from a trade show to a career fair to a resource event. People don't have to travel. And I think COVID really opened the eyes for a lot of organizations that, the cost can cut down, and the efficiency of being able to sit at your desk, and you don't have to be out of the office for 5 days. So I think you're, really seeing the efficiency of what virtual can do for your organization.
So I will tell you, Joe, I think the biggest issue is you first have to define what is a virtual event in 2020, right? I mean, so for instance, we do about 225 webinars a year at MediaOps, and we've been doing 200 webinars a year for the last 5 years. We've never thought of those as a virtual event. I think what Steve does is a virtual career fair, clearly a virtual event. Moving an in-person kind of meetup group from in-person to online, clearly a virtual event. Doing a webinar that you did last year and called it a webinar, and doing a webinar this year and calling it a virtual live webinar, not so much a virtual event. It's still a webinar. So I think the first thing you got to do is define, what do we mean by a virtual event? When I talk about a virtual event, I'm talking about something that maybe in the past was done in person, right, physically, and moving it to an electronic, digital, virtual platform or event. And I think, labeling what we did before and just slapping the word virtual on it doesn't make it a virtual event. So in that regard, I think that hones down what we mean by virtual event. It doesn't mean anything that takes place online necessarily. And I think Steve's right on. There's a ton of things that you can do better virtually that you can do in physical. But I don't want to blow smoke up anybody's exhaust here, right? There's still reasons to do physical events. And when the day comes that we can get together in person without wearing a mask and staying 10 feet apart and looking at someone with daggers if they cough, right? We'll do that. We'll do that because humans crave that interaction, that physical contact. We've learned to do a lot of things virtually that kind of take its place somewhat, but it's not 100%. And I think that's something we should state from the outset. There's a lot of things you could do virtually that you can't do in physical, but there's a lot of things still physically you can do we can't do virtually yet. So that would be my kind of 2 cents on it.
Alan, that's a really great point. And I think really the only thing I'm going to add is that just the quantity of virtual events, everyone went from all of these in-person activities to now you are just absolutely bombarded by the amount of content and convenings and things that you can attend online by not being limited to your, physical geography and where you can hop in a car and be in a couple of hours. And so I think what we're seeing through Venture Café, we're also part of a global network of 10 cities in 5 different countries, is that there's also a lot more collaboration that you weren't seeing quite as much in person because of the cost of flying, being there in person, and now you don't really have those, again, physical limitations. You can collaborate with someone in Japan or Australia or Europe or Latin America or Africa. Really a lot easier. It's just you have to, get the time zone right. So I think there's just an overwhelming amount of virtual events or, as Alan made a very great point, things that were in person before and now virtual or online. But also just the collaboration that's happening is pretty outstanding, I would say. I think that's the best part that I virtual.
I'll add just one thing, and Steve, I'm sure you can verify this. One of the great things about virtual events is they know no borders. It doesn't make a difference whether you're in Miami for virtual cafe or Boca or New York or London for that matter. I could still attend that virtual event. For a job fair, think about it. You get someone who's in Austin, Texas, looking to move to Florida and wants to get a job here. Instead of having to hop a plane, spend a night, in Fort Lauderdale and all of it. Well, it's not great for the Fort Lauderdale hotels, but how great is it to be able to come into one of Steve's job fairs locally here as if you're there, right? And now I got my job and I'm ready to move. So we see this in, we're doing this DevOps India Summit, which is the biggest DevOps conference in India the last couple of years. But 75% of the people who registered for it this year aren't in India. And so, I think that's something you got to remember. All virtual events are global. And the question of whether you want to make them that, but there's no borders. Steve, I'm interested in your
You're 100% right. When I used to put on job fairs, it was 1 month Miami, the next month Fort Lauderdale, next month West Palm, next month North Carolina, right? And I rotated those. And when I first thought of virtual career fairs, I was like, wow, I can now do an entire South Florida job fair in one day. And all these people from the Northeast that want to move down can log into the events. So that was my original why I wanted to do what we did. And, now with COVID, obviously we pivoted so that organizations now license the product and to be able to do events. I mean, now in November, there's going to be statewide events in Texas and in Florida on our platform to be able to hire veterans. That kind of stuff couldn't be done before. Like you said, Alon, right? In India, now you have a statewide job fair that's all on one platform. So if you're in Jacksonville, but you want to move to Miami, that works for you. And when you look at all of the universities that are doing these events, and, a small university in Austin, Texas can now have companies from California that can now recruit out of there. They're not going to fly, spend the hotel, spend the flight, spend that to go to this small little school that may have great, students. Or, you look at, Rose-Hulman Institute of Technology, one of the top technology schools in the nation, but it's a small school. But now this opens up the entire world, like you said, Alon. There's no boundaries when it comes to virtual. And you did hit on the point of, the face-to-face. When we can get back to this, is there going to be face-to-face? Absolutely. Like you said, people crave that face-to-face, but virtual as a whole has really changed everything. I mean, since COVID's hit, I've watched sporting events with friends on Zoom. I've done, virtual happy hours, virtual wine tastings. It's there. But, I think you said that the one thing the best is so many things added that word virtual to it, right? Webinars. Now it's virtual, even though it's been going on for years, you add virtual and now suddenly it's like, is it a bad thing that virtual is trending? No, not at all. But I think a lot of people of things that were being done before are still being done. Now they just added the word virtual in front of it.
All right. Well, we love the conversation going on here. We're going to try and move it forward a little bit. And, good transition point, I think, is, how do we move forward with these events to have them stand out? Virtual events, as you said, it gives access to more and more people, but how do you have it stand out versus all of the other events out there?
Good point. I'll go if no one. So I think a lesson we've learned, and look, our typical virtual event has somewhere between 5,000 and 20,000 people registered, and we'll have 1,000 to 7,000 live at any one time. What we have found, and we've probably done 14 or 15 since COVID. What we have found is that people who just try to take a physical event and recreate it virtually, it gets old and it gets stale and it's not interactive enough. It's not engaging enough for your virtual attendees. You can't fit a physical square peg into a virtual round hole. You've got to take advantage of the medium. And so events that I think are doing well, and interested in Steve and Eileen's point is, their experience. Events that are doing well take advantage of virtualization, which means you could do things in parallel instead of serial time, right? It's not like at a real world event, if I'm not here at 8 o'clock for coffee talk, I miss it. Well, no, in a virtual event, coffee talk is going to be there when I walk in. I may not be able to interact with the guest, but I can see that discussion take place anytime I want. So I could be in 2 different places at once, in essence, or 3 places at once. It needs to be more interactive in a virtual way. People don't want to just kind of sit and watch the Brady Bunch Zoom interface, right? With all due respect, because after a while it gets old, right? Marsha. And so they want something else. They want to be more involved in an interactive way. A job fair is a great place where you can get really interactive and have those one-on-one conversations, exchange resumes, talk about companies, etc. A virtual cafe kind of thing, right? You can't drink coffee, or you can do virtual coffee, but I'd love to hear what, Aileen, you're doing virtually to get people to interact. It's the interaction, I think, is what we need to be doing better, what we're going to see more of as we learn to say just the fact that it's virtual is not good enough. That's table stakes now, right? Where are we going beyond just having it virtual? What are we doing to seize that, right, to leverage that platform and get people sucked into it, more involved rather than passively attending? So I think that's the challenge. We're working on. I'm not saying we have answers, but we're working on them, and we're trying to figure out ways that we can do that kind of thing. But I'd love to hear what Aileen and Steve are doing.
Yeah, I think from our perspective, what makes virtual events stand out is, especially right now, with just the quantity of what's happening, I think continually innovating and experimenting and trying new things to engage people. And like Alan said, he hit the nail right on the head when you have to make it more interactive by including the people on the Zoom screen or whatever platform you're using, trying to, actually encourage dialogue, because I think that's what was so great about, in-person events, is that you can actually interact in real time. Not that we're not doing that right now, but it's, it's a little bit different. How do you get the people who are, off camera to turn their camera on, to start talking? How do you get everyone to feel like they can actually participate and engage? And some things that we've been trying out are, trying to go away from the traditional panel or webinar format, just because everyone's doing them. So that doesn't stand out. So, if you are doing kind of mini lightning talks, getting people to share their ideas in like 2 to 3 minutes, and then allowing for either, small group dialogues, breakout sessions. We use a platform called Remo that allows you to, have kind of different info tables where you can talk to those speakers who shared what they were, talking about for those little 2 to 3 minute lightning talks. Then you can go deeper and have that more meaningful conversation rather than just listening to 10 people talk for an hour. You can have those 10 people talk for, 15, 20 minutes, and then the rest of the 45 minutes, you can actually be in those small conversations and get more out of it. I think, again, bringing up Alan's point of we don't have boundaries virtually. In terms of, again, the geography, what stands out is, for Venture Cafe, is that we are part of a global network that people didn't realize when we were in person, because it's so hard to say, like, yeah, like there's Venture Cafe Tokyo happening, Venture Cafe Rotterdam, Warsaw, Boston. It's it's not as tangible when you're in person, because you don't really think about what's happening in other cities at that time. But now we can actually collaborate, have, events that are hosted together, and exchange that dialogue across all the different cities that we're in, with a Venture Cafe. And it makes it really interesting. It's kind of the like think global, act local mindset. How do you bring in other ideas that you typically wouldn't have, or bring other people that you typically wouldn't have access to in person, and trying to find a way to make that relevant locally. But Steve, I'd love to hear kind of your perspective as well.
Yeah, I'm gonna take it in a different direction. With like the career fairs and stuff like that, I think it starts from the beginning, the marketing aspect of it, right? How do you differentiate, what you're doing? Because everybody's putting on virtual career fairs, right? There's not any in-person event. So what makes, one better than the other? And we may not put the events on ourselves, but we help them, tell them what to do in the marketing. Press releases are big. Really, we had our registration page that we designed, that we essentially redesigned, due to COVID, to give more information, because there's so much information out there, and there's so many career fairs. And again, you got, 50 different job fair organizations, and, some are on our platform, some on our other platforms out there. And it just doesn't come down to, hey, there's a job fair. And we put, so that they can design, they can put information, they can put videos on there, and really design this to give the people the information. So when you're researching everything out there and you look at 2 job fairs in the same city. One says, here's a job fair, come get a job. And the other has, here's some welcome videos. Here's the companies that are going to be there. Here's the, you know, some of the jobs that are going to be there. Which one are the people going to look at? They're going to kind of go towards the one that has more information. So marketing to me is the number one thing out there, right? So from press releases to what they put out there on social media, you know, and then it's the follow-up. Okay. And I know with, you know, Alan, I'm sure you do this with, you know, with your platform is, right? They know the reporting, how many people register to how many people log in to all of that information. To me, the follow-up is key on reminders, you know, sending a reminder out to the people 5 or 10 minutes before the event to say, the event is going to be live. By the time they, you know, click on that link to go in, the event's live and they can go in. Because guess what? Everybody on this call here set a calendar invite. It popped up 15 minutes before, but how many people that are attendees, are candidates actually set that in their calendar? So a good reminder email the day before, a reminder text message, even a reminder. I used to send reminder text messages an hour into the event or an hour before the event to say 1 hour left to be able to meet with the employers. So getting in front of those candidates on the front side to give them more information so that they don't have to, you know, scroll through 100 different events. They can kind of see what's out there. More information is better. I know some people say less is more. I think in this case, where there's so many events out there, the more information that they can see, the better. And then following up with reminder texts and emails is always key. You're going to see your login ratio skyrocket. And when I look at my clients, the ones that don't send reminders are in that 50%, 50% login ratio. The people that listen and send, you know, reminder texts and emails are in the 80%. And I'll say it, you know, with Nikki on here was the first one ever when they did their career event, over 90% login ratio. I think it was 92% login ratio, you know, for the South Florida Tech Career Fair. That's never been done before. I used to think I was good in the high 80s, but you know, 90%. And that comes down to setting the front expectations on the marketing and then setting the back end with the reminders.
Steve, I'd like to riff off that if you don't mind. So you're right, marketing plays a huge role in it. Content is always important. What we're seeing, like taking it to the next level, is that registration process, right? When someone registers to attend the event, they register and taking your case, Steve, right? So I see, you know, ABC companies there and a couple of the jobs they're doing is director of marketing and program manager, right? Wouldn't it be great that within my registration, I could set an appointment for a one-on-one with the hiring person at ABC company? Or in the kind of events we're doing, right? We have our agenda and, you know, we'll have 3 different tracks going on. You can make your schedule while you register, right? I want to see Joe Russo at 10 o'clock. I want to see Steve at 10:30 and Aileen at 11. And man, now when I go into my event, I automatically get those pop-ups. Hey, it's 10:30. Joe Russo's on. Head over to Auditorium B. Hey, Aileen is at the, you know, virtual cafe booth, and you have an 11:30 with her or something. Not that we're doing that right now. Let me be clear, but I've seen platforms that offer this, and it's something we're going to have hopefully in the next month or two, where I think that's a big, again, taking virtual and leveraging that platform.
Steve, if you can just send us all an invite to your next sprint planning so we can come up with some user stories with you.
Okay. Sounds good.
You know, on all seriousness on some of these things, I keep on thinking back, and I don't know why, to that episode of The Office where they have some virtual thing going on, and Michael's saying, like, I want everyone else to be in awe of our event. I want them to look at it and be like, how did they get Al Roker to come? You know, and you think about like marketing in that sense, like, oh my gosh, like, hey, they got like this guy there, right? But they stood out, you know, and that's what my whole little funny anecdote is meant to be there. This event stood out. So when we had that event, Steve, that virtual career fair, it stood out because it was one of the only things out there at the time. And because of that, obviously we were able to get you connected to a lot of other business, and you've really stood out amongst the rest of the world in what you do, which is pretty nice. But my next question was actually going to be on marketing, and you guys kind of hit on a lot of that right off the bat. But I would love to kind of spin this a little bit and talk about platforms out there, because I know Steve, obviously, you have your own platform, but there's a lot of other virtual event platforms out there. You could say Zoom. Obviously, here we are today. This is a platform for virtual events that a lot of people are doing. But what are you guys seeing out there that it might work for what you do, or might be working for some other people, that says, hey, here's a means to have this virtual event? And again, either if it's like something that's readily available, or it's something that you guys have seen that you've been able to ready make.
I mean, I think there's a lot of platforms. I know with Alon and the platform that he uses out there, they are Alon does a really good job. On the trade show side, there is on the career fair side, I have a few competitors that are out there. I mean, Brazen's out there, Career Echo, V Fairs, these companies can all do career fairs. And really what I tell everybody is, on a daily basis, my team is out there and we're doing demos. And I tell everybody, here's my competitors. I'm not scared to say my competitor's name that's out there. And I tell them, make sure you're looking when you go out there and you look at virtual career fairs, because, now you can type in, into Google and type in, host a virtual career fair, and you're going to, see everything. And, what used to the spend before on Google before COVID hit, there wasn't that much. It wasn't a huge market. When I did my research and, knew my competitors, it wasn't big. What people were spending was peanuts. And now it's substantially more, right? Because a lot of people have, jumped into the space real quick because they're like, right, the virtual key. Oh my gosh, it's virtual. I need to jump in. But, last night I get an email from an event I'm supposed to be on that it's on a competitor's platform. And through a university that we do some recruiting out of, and they said, sorry, it's the event's canceled. Candidates couldn't register. There was issues with the platform. That company, unfortunately, tried to jump in the space so quickly, but they weren't ready to jump into the space. So really, when you start, researching and looking at them, look at everybody out there, look at the clients that they have, and really what you need to look for on the virtual platforms is, everybody wants to look at cost, right? But cost doesn't mean everything, right? Is you have to look at, does it do what you want it to do? And that's the most important thing. If you have a goal, and Alon kind of touched on it, is taking an in-person event and making it go virtual, it's not the same thing. And a lot of people in the beginning said, oh my gosh, how do I take an in-person career fair and now make it a virtual career fair? And I said, you can't, right? I can say we mirror a virtual, an in-person career fair as much as possible, right? I built the platform to be able to do that because that was my background to be able to do it. But there are some differences, right? You're not going to be able to talk where, let's just say, an in-person career fair, you had 500 people at the event, and there was long lines because everybody had to wait in line to get to the front of that person, to talk to that person, to find out what kind of jobs they had and what does their company do. It's the first questions that they ask. Well, now in a virtual world, how our platform works is they can see that information before they even chat. So it's a little bit different. On a trade show, I love that you can go in and you can set, okay, I want to see this speaker at this time. So you get a reminder. That's great. On the career fair side, I'll tell you, I don't love that one-on-one that a candidate can set it up because maybe they're not a right fit. Because those candidates are going to come in and they're going to set up a schedule with every single one. And then how many people actually show up, right, is very small. So now you wasted that recruiter's time. And maybe, these candidates out there, they just apply, right? If you look at Indeed and some of these, right? Candidates just hit apply to every job. And so they don't really, it might not be a good fit. So on that aspect, I'm not a huge fan of the one-on-one. I love the aspect of a trade show, being able to say, here's the speakers that I want to see. And you get the reminder right into the event. I think that's genius. I love that aspect of it.
Aileen?
Sounded a little like Mark Cuban and Shark Tank too on that definition, Steve. Well done.
Yeah, I think what Steve said in terms of does the platform do what you want it to do is the most important part. I know when we were kind of at that very beginning of transitioning from in-person to virtual, again, we're looking at access, like what is the most accessible to as many people as one of our core values. And that's honestly why we chose Zoom at first. It's also something that we were using internally and it was comfortable for us. But then again, as like the Venture Cafe Global Network, we were checking out all types of different event platforms to see how you could replicate some of that in-person feel of connection, networking, those small side conversations. And we came across Remo that the executive director of Venture Cafe Warsaw happened to have a relationship with. And it's not perfect, I will say that. There's definitely some things that we would like to see different in Remo, but in terms of, again, having those, I think someone mentioned like, the small breakout sessions or the discussions, it's very easy for people to do it. Go into Remo, it looks like a cafe layout, or you could actually change the layout. So like the event design is something, you could have it on a beach, you could have it in a formal gala setting, but it's essentially like different tables and chair setups, and you can self-select which table or chair you're going to, and you can, it's kind of serendipitous, is if you are walking into a regular room in person, you don't know who you might find. And so that's how Remo has worked for us. You can kind of just double click on a chair in Remo and see who's at that table. And if the conversation isn't for you, then you can hop around to another table, and it's a lot easier. Whereas in Zoom, it's kind of like they have the breakout sessions, but someone else is managing it. For us in Remo, it's nice that the attendees are able to kind of curate their own experience and hopping between different tables, different conversations, with that freedom as they would in person. So I would say, again, what works for you? And I mean, cost was a factor for us, but since we're a global network, we were able to negotiate a good price for all of our sites using it. But yeah, I'm just gonna do a shout out to Remo because they're also a smaller event platform. And so they are more willing to work directly with their clients to kind of troubleshoot, figure out, what's next in Remo version 2.0 or 3.0, to really make their clients happy. And I think that customer service aspect was really a nice touch for us.
So Joe, I'd like to chime in. So Steve and I have spoken about this offline because him and I have had some discussions. Steve, I mean, he has his own platform, and it's a beautiful thing, and it's great for the job fair stuff. We don't have our own platform. I don't pretend to. We use one platform. Steve knows 6 Connect. Going forward, Steve, we actually just signed 2 more platforms. So we're going to have 3 different platforms, and we're going to integrate them where they make sense. And then depending on the kind of event we're doing, we'll take different aspects of each, if you will. Our value add is, and Aileen, the platform you've chosen sounds great. I think there's a platform for every use case out there these days. There's so damn many platforms. You got to really look at, as Steve says, what do you want out of this? What's your goal? What kind of event do you want to do? And what kind of features are important to you? For us, we will help you. We have these platforms. We have in-house video, production. So we produce the actual sessions and videos or what have you. We go either live streamed or we'll do recorded. but our biggest value add, frankly, is if you're doing an event within our sweet spot of cyber, DevOps, and cloud, we have the audience that we're going to help bring to your show. If you're not in, and Steve and I had this conversation, if you're not in my sweet spot of our audience, I don't consider ourselves, a generic event company, the same way Steve wouldn't do trade shows. He does career fairs. That's his thing. Our thing is doing events within our area of expertise, right? Concentration. Aileen, is doing venture cafe, kind of those meetup kind of groups. So I think there's a lesson there. One size doesn't fit all. And you need, if you want to be successful with your event, no matter what your event is, find the right platform, the right partner to do it with, right? Don't just pick because someone's on a panel here or what have you. You gotta shop around.
Well, you can pick me. You can pick me because I'm on.
You
But that's but yeah, no, it's you guys both, Aileen, Alon, you said it. It's really comes down to what do you want to accomplish, and is it the right partner, right? It's again, and I say this a lot because there's sometimes people like, oh my gosh, I found something that's really cheap, right? It's free, right?
Yeah.
One platform came out now and said, hey, we're going to give it to all, if you're a client of ours, we're going to give it to you free for the fall. And guess what? It didn't work. So it's not always about free or anything like that. It's, can they handle what you want, right? There was some that came to me and it wasn't a good fit for me, and I sent it to Alon, and just because there's somebody comes to us and I have a virtual platform doesn't mean it's the right fit for me. I said no to a lot of people out there. Really look to see what it can do.
Yeah. And on that point too, I really want to, pivot here to this conversation about partners and sponsors real quick. We only have about 10 more minutes to go. And this, I think, is a really big thing here, and how your partnerships and your sponsors can play a role in a successful event. Obviously, for our virtual career fair, Steve, when we put that together, we also partnered with a few other organizations, Career Source, Emerge Americas, try and get the word out, right, and make sure that we have the right resources in place to have a more successful event. But for everybody here, we've obviously had our own partnerships and our own sponsors to help put that in. Really, with Green Bay, go Dolphins, Steve. Come on.
Oh, come on.
So curious.
Not going there.
Hey, we got a chance this year. Everyone's got a chance.
Yeah, everyone has a chance.
Everybody's undefeated right now.
Exactly. Yeah. We're all perfect season. So would love to hear some thoughts on how you guys have used partnerships and sponsorships to build successful events, and maybe what other organizations could do to leverage some of those same things.
So for me, our partnerships and sponsorships fall into two categories. One are let's call them commercial sponsors, right? So for instance, last week we put on an event called GitLab Commit, which is by a company called GitLab. I don't know how many of you out here have heard of GitLab, but they're a unicorn in the DevOps space. And we had 15,000 plus registrations for GitLab Commit, of which 10,000 plus came from GitLab, right? So they just have they have an open source, open core product. They have a tremendous community, and they put out the word, and they had tremendous response of people signing up, and so it was great. Other times, we've worked with a lot of foundations, like not-for-profit foundations, so the Linux Foundation or the Cloud Native Computing Foundation and stuff like that. You'll have their executive director speaking, and it's on this topic that's germane to them, and these foundations bring on huge followings and communities. So of course you leverage your sponsors and partners communities, but my only caveat to that is don't burn them out. Don't burn your sponsors, don't burn your partnerships by overdoing the amount of events you ask them to help you with, or by, if you're not delivering, let them know that you're not delivering, that you owe them one, that you somehow going to make it up. and do better. Because that we've seen too, right? You just can't keep going to the well and burning out those communities. I see some of the chats around. Look, everyone's on meetups or message boards or whatever, looking for something to attend, and you can't burn people out with because there's so many events. My 2 cents.
For us, sponsors, we consider them partners. And for any group or individual that's looking to sponsor Venture Cafe, we actually try to make it a point before they give us money for us to really understand, what are their goals in sponsoring us? Is it just to get their brand out there? Is it to make connections? Is it to, highlight something that they're working on? Really, what is their goal? And how can Venture Cafe play a part with it? And so the way that we work with sponsors and partners who are non-paying is really trying to help meet their individual and respective goals with our own platforms. And so I will say that sometimes we turn down opportunities that we don't find are a good fit for us, and we try to make it so that it's heavily curated to what their actual interests are in terms of reaching out to certain individuals or organizations to make sure they're also at the table. A lot of folks come to Venture Cafe for those specific connections because we've worked with over 1,000 organizations to put on our weekly events. And so we really try to come at it with understanding of what is your end goal, and how can we, even if you're just sponsoring, one Thursday, how can we continue to have an ongoing partnership? So even after, that one sponsored night is over, like, we're going to keep reaching out and connecting you to people or different organizations that might help you meet that goal, just as, an ongoing way of showing, that we really want to have something continued, not that we're searching for future sponsorship opportunities. So it is a nice, it usually does happen that way, but really we're about the relationship. And so we want to make it as less transactional, more about the ongoing relationship as possible. And that's for anyone that we partner with.
Yeah, I think partnerships are key when you're looking in your back to the marketing side of it. It's one, it gets their name out there, but it gets your name out there as well. And one person can only do so much, but if you start having 4 or 5 partners, and if your sponsors are out there as well, you can now get to more people, because some people are only going to watch, hey, what this organization does. They might not watch anybody else's, but they may not watch yours. But all of a sudden you have these partnerships with other ones out there. It just gets your name out there. It gives you a better chance to get in front of the audience, because everybody here, and going back to what a couple people said here, and I'm not going to scroll all the way up through the chat, but how do you find the right event out there? Because people are looking in certain locations. It's always that tough thing to find, to find the right thing. But if you're partnered with the right people, maybe that person that needs to be at your event may not know about you yet, but they know about one of your partners or one of your sponsors, and they see that. So now in turn, that gets them into your wheelhouse.
Those collaborative partnerships have definitely, the events where we have 4 to 5 different partners are always the most successful. Better if you have more.
But here's a strategy that people out here who are looking to do events should take with them. Joe, you mentioned it in the event with Steve. Aileen, you mentioned it. I mentioned it. Partnering with community organizations who aren't necessarily, they don't have money to pay you, probably, right? Because they're community organizations, but they have community. And partnering with those people, I find, in terms of getting people to my events, to the events we do, is our best bet. because they bring community with them. And they're generally not as commercial as like a paid sponsor is going to be. Not that paid sponsors are bad. I like making money. Steve likes making money, right? Paid sponsors are good. But partnering with the community organizations is a real great way to expand your base, to get the word out. And it also, it's like good karma. It's a good thing to do, right? And you know, can't emphasize that enough. Work with community organizations that are in your space, reach out to the community, and I think it comes back and helps you over and over again.
Awesome. And yeah, on that note too, we're just a few minutes left here, but I love that last point on community. So I would love to end on that real quick and talk really briefly, very briefly, on the power and the meaning of community behind what you guys do. If you just want to like each take a quick minute on that.
I feel like I spoke too much. Aileen, why don't you go first?
I mean, community is the key to everything about Venture Cafe. That's why we started what we're doing 4 years ago, because the innovation community ecosystem in Miami was, you know, pretty segmented, and so there was no real entity kind of bringing them together. And so we thought that's where Venture Cafe would play a part. And we actually like don't have a, you know, a big marketing budget or a marketing staff person. We grew to how we are now really by word of mouth, by, you know, people coming to the event, being part of the community, and spreading the word. And so I think as long as you have the people in mind first, and what they're going to get out of it, they're going to keep bringing in their friends, their network, you know, their organizations, their potential sponsors as well. So really keeping the community, the people who are going to be attending the event, kind of top of mind.
I mean, I think community is, you know, is very important. I mean, just a little backstory about me is, you know, 2 years ago, I got an email from the city of Boynton Beach about an organization called 1909. And they said that, hey, there was an entrepreneurship class that they were going through. And right here in my local city, close to where I live, close to the office, I'm like, I'll go through this. That in turn got me in touch with South Florida Tech, which, you know, in turn, my community, just from an email that I received, got me to where it's at, right? And they have now helped me to expand my business as well. So, you know, that's from an internal thing, a community. If I can do that and get involved with the local community, right, it gets your name out there. And Alon touched on it, you know, and Aileen touched on this, you know, how important really community is. It's because you don't know who they know, right? Everybody knows different people, right? I only know so many people, right? You could say you have thousands and thousands of people, your connections on LinkedIn, but are they really your community? Or is it your local community that is really going to help you get your name out there or help you find that career that you're looking for? Because so many people are, right? It's stressful, especially now with COVID. So many people are unemployed. There's more talent available today than there ever has been. And great talent that's out there. So now it's really more of where it used to be the candidates kind of had a choice where they want to go. Now companies kind of have a choice of who they want to bring in. And using your local community to find that right platform or find that right job is very important.
Yep. So I'll end it with this. There are people out here maybe who are listening in on this, and I know South Florida Tech is going to a membership kind of model where it's $50 and you're saying, do I pay $50? Why do I want to pay $50 to be in this community? And, you know, I look at it as a corporate membership, and I forget what our corporate membership costs, but let me just say, we're not that big a company where it doesn't, you know, where I don't know what I'm paying and I have to sign a check. Steve, you're probably in the same boat. And here's the thing about community, where Steve has directly gotten work from it already. I haven't, because our community is very global. I don't expect to get a lot out of South Florida Tech per se, and I don't look for it for work from it. But when I look to hire people, when I look to find local talent, I reach out to that community because that's what community is. And that's the kind of thing that Steve builds in his community, you know, local in the job fairs. It's the kind of thing that Venture Café is doing. It. We, at some point, you all need to have that community. It's great to have a local community that you can go to leverage for more business, for connections, for just for the networking, to stay on top of what you're doing. So, you know, that's kind of my pitch. The communities are important. They're important for a lot of reasons. You want to build a business, you want to build a career. That's the deal.
And thank you so much for everybody here. And Steve, I still remember that call that you gave me. It was like, hey, you know, I heard about the accelerator, but you know, I feel like, I don't know, I feel like I've done business before. Like, what am I supposed to learn and stuff like that. And I'm so glad it all came together for us full circle here a year later. You know, and just one little step to another. I feel that was the power of the community and everything that you guys have done too, from MediaOps and, you know, seeing the global reach of what you've done at Alon, and then of course Venture Café. I mean, obviously in-person events are really powerful for you guys, you know, right before everything happened. But, you know, it's been really special to see the success of everyone's respective endeavors go out there. So we'll end on that and give you guys all a good bravo and a cheers for everything you've been doing. Thank you so much for being a part of our South Florida tech community and everybody doing their little bit. You have my respect and my regard for being a part of it. And I want to thank everyone who tuned in today and shared in the conversation. And, you know, let's have a good week. Let's get another cup of coffee in us so we can keep powering through it. And hope everybody has a good rest of your week here. So we'll see you all later. Thank you again and have a good day.
Thanks everybody. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.